Good morning or good afternoon, whatever the case may be, in whatever time zone you are in. My name is Vince Garcia. I am the marketing manager with ipDatatel in Houston, Texas. I want to thank everybody for joining us today as ipDatatel presents LTE Technology Deep Dive, Decrypting the Standards. I'd like to first introduce you to our presenter today, Scott Plunkett. Scott joined ipDatatel in January 2017 as the company's product manager. He has over 20 years of experience in product management, with over 10 of those in network security and premise security systems and architectures. Scott remains focused on working with dealer partners to develop best-in-class dealer value while delivering top-tier user experiences. Scott, let's get started with Futureproof Communications. This is where it all starts.
Absolutely. This is kind of the foundation, right? So obviously we're gonna talk about LTE today, and we're gonna do a deep dive. So we're gonna get into the nuts and bolts. We're gonna kind of get into all the frequencies and all that kind of stuff. So we are gonna nerd out.
Okay.
But before we kind of get into the LTE part of this, we need to talk about the foundation, right? Okay. And the foundation of ipDatatel as a company is multipath or dual path communications.
Right.
And we always start with IP first. And so the key is this: it's broadband. So, but then, if that were to fail in some way, then what? All right. So this is the then what conversation. So LTE is what we're going to talk about today. I'm excited about it because obviously there's a ton to discuss. And but the foundation is this: it's about future-proofing our dealers and getting them the best technologies in their hands.
Fantastic. Let's get started. Let's start with the Cellular Technologies alphabet soup. What is all of this? Where do we start?
It can be confusing. An easy way to dice it up and pull it apart is to just look at the underlying technologies, right? Look at the way that the different carriers deliver their service to the customer. So we've heard about LTE. What does that mean? We've heard 4G LTE. I think there was super fast LTE, advanced LTE. What's that mean? Well, LTE stands for long-term evolution. It was essentially the first kind of real 4G technology. There were others that were kind of faux G that came up that were out there for a little while, but it's the first kind of really to be classified as real 4G connectivity. The interesting thing about LTE was it was originally designed just for data. Okay. It was originally designed to work with the other technologies, but then over time what they realized was it was so good at managing the bandwidth that they could add voice services to LTE right alongside it and start doing away or even migrating other parts of their bandwidth from older technologies to the LTE technology.
Okay.
So that's an interesting component. So that's LTE. And then there's GSM. Right? So GSM is kind of, we'll call it last year's technology. Okay. It is effectively the technology that both AT&T and T-Mobile have been built on for the last several years. Right? They both have GSM networks. GSM stands for Global System for Mobile Communications. One of the other things that you'll know, though, is that GSM is really about 80% of the foreign market, right? Mm-hmm. So if I go to Europe, I'm probably on a GSM network, right? Okay. If I go to Japan, GSM network, right? Okay. So there are some other ones out there. NTT Docomo has some crazy ones. There's some ones in China. But what you'll see is that even those are moving towards LTE. And the last one is CDMA. So CDMA is the one that, and CDMA stands for Code Division Multiple Access. It's used by Verizon and Sprint. So again, a different technology. But these differences are, when you go to dump Sprint and you want to go over to AT&T and they're like, oh, sorry, you can't bring your phone.
Yeah.
That's why, because they're different technologies. The CDMA stuff won't talk to this GSM stuff, but in the new world, in the LTE world, a lot of them will talk as long as they can talk to the same band or channel. So, and we'll get into that in a minute. But so this is kind of the alphabet soup. So what I did was on this slide, which I'm sure everybody can see the deck. There, I put a couple of different. There's a couple of links here.
Okay.
And those are really, really deep. If you want to get into the nitty gritty and really look at all the various bandwidths and things like that, those two links that are there are great resources. Really, really good resources. The first one is about all the different LTE bands and the megahertz, the ranges that they utilize and all of that. And the second one is more about kind of comparing technologies. So all about providing resources and making sure that you've got lots available to really understand these topics. So a couple of really good links there.
Okay, fantastic. We'll check those out. Now, this is something that surprised me, is that when I was reviewing the deck, to find out that there's all these different flavors of LTE. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the great things about LTE as a technology is that as the carriers and as the vendors that build this hardware evolved, hence the name long-term evolution, as they evolved, they realized that they had learned a lot about TDD and FDD and all the different methodologies for making these wireless communications work, and they came out with Cat 1, which is it's right there in the middle. Cat 1 is what we all think of when we think of LTE today. It's about our cell phones and even our communicator, the BAT LTE, is a Cat 1 device, right? Okay. So it's kind of right there in the middle, and it's really where everybody started. Well, of course, we're power hungry, right? As soon as we get something great, we want more, right? So they realized that, we need higher bandwidth. We need to be able to pump more down this pipe. So they started working on the Category 4 devices. Those are the ones that are just now coming out. You see all these, a lot of the new cars that are coming out have 4G hotspots. Okay. Those are using Category 4. And what they're really doing is they're acting as like a Wi-Fi hotspot, but they've got a really fat pipe that they can talk to the internet. So that's why you can pile your 5 friends in the car and everybody's got good speed and your kids can watch Netflix and all of that. The reason that works is because they're using Cat 4 devices. There's even a Cat 6 that's up at like a gigabit per second. That's insane speeds over wireless, but Cat 6 is out there. The one that we're more focused on today is the Cat M1. The reason that appeals to us is that I don't need a ton of speed. I'm sending alarm packets. I'm sending home automation information back and forth. I don't need a ton of speed to do that. Mm-hmm. But what I do need is something that's super efficient. And the M1 modules that are coming out are less expensive, and they've got really efficient front ends on them in terms of the wireless components that are involved. So that gives me an opportunity to use just the bandwidth that I need, which should mean I get good pricing with the carrier, right? I can cram more of those devices into one section of bandwidth. And it should be more cost effective for us. So that's actually the direction. So in the alarm space, you'll see people go in that direction. And then there's even lower than that, things like a lighting sensor that just sends information, says, hey, there's a light on in this room. Mm-hmm. Tiny bits of bandwidth that you need for that. So there's one even below that, so NB, which is narrowband.
And that's able to travel through walls.
Yeah, it's the key to these technologies is less about the wavelength and more about the amount of bandwidth that they consume. Okay. Right? So you're right, though. Lots of different flavors, lots of different use cases, but here's the key. The key is these are all LTE technologies. So what does that tell us? We're about future-proofing, right? These technologies are here to stay. They're going to be around for a while.
Fantastic. All right. Next, LTE bands and channels. Scott, how exactly do the bands and channels, how does this differ from the speeds that we've discussed on some of the previous slides?
Yeah, so the slide before was about the speed. It was about the amount of bandwidth you need to kind of make something happen. These channels and frequencies, these are about how you connect, right? It's about can thing A talk to thing B, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that you'll notice here is on CDMA, you maybe had 4 or 5 bands. I think there were I think that at the most there were like 8. GSM, there's a few dozen because you've got all of Europe's kind of run differently. But with LTE, there are dozens. These are just the ones that you're seeing kind of for the U.S. But literally, if I pull up the list for our ultra high gain and ultra wideband high gain antenna, mm-hmm. the list is got like 70 different bands on it. It is really long. And what you'll see is that the amount of spectrum that has been added for these various bands is going to grow over time because it's the better technology, right? So you'll see that carriers will drop a part of the spectrum from their GSM or CDMA technology, and they'll, as they drop that, they'll add a new band, a new LTE band, to take up that frequency space that they were using before. They still own that bandwidth; they want to utilize it,
right?
So they'll add an LTE band. So let's look at this one real quick and just kind of look at some interesting things about it. You'll see that China and India, those bands 40 and 41, completely incompatible with our stuff here. So What that means is really, really difficult to make what's a truly world phone, right? Which same applies to us, right? Really, really difficult to make a truly world communicator or a world device in terms of the Helix. But Europe, there's a little bit of overlap. You know, they've got 3, 7, and 20, and the 1800 megahertz band is pretty close to 1900 and the 1700. But in the U.S., you'll see that AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint, the top 3 are pretty close to each other. Sprint's
working the same.
Yeah, 2. They all have 2. They all have 4, which means I should probably be able to move devices around, right?
Okay.
For us, what that means is that if I have a new device that talks LTE, I should be able to go to another carrier if I want to. And that's something we may be talking about here in the future. We're a Verizon company today. We've been with Verizon for a long time. We may be able to do some shifting and move to other parts of the world using the new LTE communicators. So the other thing to remember, though, is these all have at least 2 or 3 bands, right?
Okay.
So all 3 of them have the 1900 megahertz. All 3 have 1700, some version of it, and all of them have some lower end, 700 and even below. That's important for kind of the breadth, right? Sometimes you'll have obstructions to go through. Sometimes you'll need to go a longer distance. It just depends upon kind of the use case. And they can do beamforming here. They can do all kinds of things. The interesting thing about this slide is that there is some overlap in places. Example, AT&T a couple years ago was interested in buying T-Mobile. That was the big deal, right? They were going to merge and they were going to be the big mama.
Yes.
The reason they were interested, look at how much their systems overlapped. They both had 1900. They both had 1700 D and E. One of them didn't have F. They both had 700, and T-Mobile had that extra 600 megahertz. That's new. They just acquired that in the most recent auction. Picked that up this summer. That's where T-Mobile's putting their money going forward. That's when they want to make that claim about we're better than the others. We've got better service. That 600 megahertz is interesting for them, and that's where they're putting all their money going forward. So, for us, what this means is great. There's competition, lots of new technologies, and there's lots of places for us to go if we need to have other partners in other parts of the world.
Fantastic. A lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Scott, when we look at the BAT LTE, one of the first things that people notice is, first of all, it's got 2 antennas, and second, those antennas are flat. So let's talk about why antennas matter.
Yeah, so it's interesting because so let's talk about first why they're flat, right? So they're flat because they are essentially inside that antenna is actually a PCB. So most antennas are kind of this helical coil thing. Inside there, they're PCB, and that PCB allows them to tune to all those different frequencies we saw on the previous slides, right? So that's why they're flat. Is the different parts of the antenna are tuned to different frequencies. And they do that with the PCB. That allows them to be very efficient, right? They can make a lot of them very, very fast. They don't have coils to wind and that kind of thing. Okay. So that's why they're flat. Let's talk about a little bit about our high gain antenna. And it's a really good example. You'll see that it's kind of flatter and wider. People, kind of jokingly refer to it as the paddle. But our ultra wideband high gain antenna gives you an additional 3 dBi in signal strength and peak gain. Okay. That's huge. That makes a huge difference in terms of performance. We already ship, first of all, diversity antennas. Having 2 of them means that you can pick up different reflections of a signal, and then having the high gain antenna shipped with it is incredible. So it means that we got great feedback on the BAT LTE when it came out. We did a beta program. I think a lot of people that are on this call may have been a part of that. So when we did that beta program, one of the things that we got back was set it up, and even with only 1 or 2 bars showing up, had great signal strength, had great response from the device. So there is some difference there in terms of kind of what each bar means. But the key thing to remember is that with this diversity antenna, in the beta program, we had feedback that somebody had taken one of these devices and put it in the basement of a bank. And they were still getting great signal strength out of it. Wow. So that says a lot about what having diversity antennas means. But this ultra wideband antenna is a great feature. Most high gain antennas are $50, $100. This is, I think, $30 at distribution. So really nice, and you get 2 of the paddle antennas. So antennas do matter when you're talking about LTE. Having a device that's got diversity antennas is important, and then beyond that, what's the technology behind the antenna?
Fantastic. Antennas matter. All right. Now, on this slide, let's review the BAT LTE. We probably have some folks out there in the audience that were at our July BAT LTE webinar. So this will be a bit of a review, but let's talk about the BAT LTE specifically.
July feels like so long ago.
I know, right?
So key things about the BAT LTE. First of all, it's our flagship, right? It is the new flagship, and it has a long progenitor, right? It's got a long history with the company. It is our most fully featured. Gives us something new, right? Concord support for the first time. It came on the LTE device. That was a big deal, but it retains all of the great features that you love about the BAT, right? Simple to install. This one gets dual high gain antennas rather than the single one that you're used to.
Right.
But the same universal panel compatibility, the same great event notifications, the remote programming, the capability to download, affect, change, and then upload directly to the panel. Huge benefit with the BAT devices. And then remote access on the go, right? Being able to kind of remotely arm, disarm, and see what's going on with your panel.
Absolutely.
So BAT LTE is, again, it is taking this LTE technology that we've been talking about, kind of this deep dive that we've been doing, and applying it to the BAT devices that we've had around for years.
Fantastic. All right, again, let's talk about something that we actually broke the news on last month at our Helix Deep Dive webinar. Let's talk about LTE for the Helix.
Yeah, we don't get to do a whole lot of that, so that's fun, right? But so last month we talked about the LTE solution for the Helix. And the thing that you'll see here is this is very much in the same vein as what we've got with the BAT LTE. We talked about diversity and having dual antennas. Same thing here, right? We even mount them separately, right? So they're mounted differently. So if you look at the image on the left, you've got the module is mounted where it goes in slot 1 on the Helix. One of the antennas is down at the bottom, and it's kind of laid flat, and it's underneath that speaker. And the other one lays kind of vertical, and it attaches it to that red tape that's up in the top. So again, you're creating that diversity. You're separating the antennas, and one is flat in one direction, one's flat in the other. One's vertical, one's horizontal. And so that creates a great environment for being able to catch those LTE signals and put the power out into the space. The second one is just an image. The second image on the screen is just one of the module and just one of the 2 antennas attached. The third one is actually something that I think is pretty interesting. So we've taken the signal bar LEDs and put them right on the card, and then you can also see the cellular LED indicators that are telling you whether you've got a good signal, good network connection, that type of thing. So it's all there. You've got effectively all of the great capabilities that you have with the BAT LTE now in the Helix.
Now available for Helix. Fantastic. Scott, let's talk about alarm signaling, notifications, and controls. Basically, bring it all together for us.
Yeah, so we've been talking about LTE and all the different there's a bajillion different bands and what all of that means. What it all boils down to though is that is all there to support the alarm signaling and notifications, right? It's to make sure that the alarm communication functions exactly the way that you expect it to. It's to make sure that we've got good monitoring, right? We've done a lot of integration with the Verizon network to make sure that we've got good, clean monitoring on these LTE devices.
Right.
That advanced network supervision, meaning you don't have to wait till the next day to know that something's happened. We know pretty quickly, right?
Right.
Most times within seconds. And this all supports the user experience that our dealers' customers have come to expect. They can interact with their smartphone, they can interact with it from their computer, they can actually get notifications. It is the Secure Smart. Our version of how you interact with your alarm panel is the future. And so we talked about Futureproof Communications. This is the software side of that.
Fantastic. This is it. All right. Scott, let's talk about why folks should choose ipDatatel. We like to review this at the end of each presentation.
Sure, and I think it makes a lot of sense, right? We've been talking about LTE and all, the various, kind of technical aspects of it,
Yeah.
But when it really comes right down to it, those are just reasons, in my mind, that point to that expertise, points to why you should be using ipDatatel as your platform, right? Reliable alarm communications is at the top of that list. I would say right there with reliable should be that future-proof, terminology, right?
Right.
Universal panel compatibility, right? Regardless of whether you go with the Helix and you're taking over sensors, or you go with a BAT and you're taking over a panel, that universality is a part of our DNA. Simple installation. It doesn't do a whole lot of good to be universally compatible and have really good communications if it's a pain in the butt to install, right? We're about delivering value to the dealers and allowing them to deliver value to their customers. That means that our hardware has got to be something that's easy to install. It's got to be quick. It's got to be something that they don't have to train for hours and hours to get their people up and running on, right? So that simple installation is part and parcel of who we are. Interactive services, we talked a little bit about what that means kind of from the BAT side. Obviously the Helix has its own entire suites, right? And that all comes down to Secure Smart, to the app. The smart devices, all of the home automation that we've added to the Helix in the last couple of months. We did the Helix deep dive.
Yep.
We talked about all of that and the security that's associated with those smart devices. And then really, again, talking about eliminating truck rolls. It's about delivering that value to the dealer in a way that they can derive the most from that recurring monthly revenue that's so important to this industry.
Yep, fantastic. Plenty of reasons to start doing business with ipDatatel. Folks, in order to learn more, I've got some information for you here on the slide. Please visit www.ipdatatel.com/Helix for my Helix page. You'll find plenty of information there, product information, product sheet, our catalog, technical documents such as the manual, the quick start guide, as well as the alarmdealer.com portal guide. And you will also have links to ipDatatel's YouTube channel with plenty of informative Helix videos. You can also reach out to sales directly via email at sales@ipdatatel.com, or here locally in the Houston metro area, 713-452-2700, extension 1. Outside of Houston metro, use our toll-free line 866-896-2944, extension 1. Again, sales@ipdatatel.com, Houston metro, 713-452-2700. Outside of Houston metro, toll-free at 866-896-2944. Scott, I am looking down the board, and we are starting to get some questions rolling in. What do you say we get started?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. First up is Steve in Southern California. Steve asks, Scott, you mentioned TDD and FDD. What is that, and why should I care?
Hey, so I love doing these webinars because we always get great questions, right? And I can never slip anything by. So I did casually mention TDD and FDD, and so those are terms that refer to the network topology. So FDD stands for frequency division duplex. TDD stands for time division duplex. The reason you would care is because LTE actually supports both topology types. So TDD is a much more efficient way to use bandwidth, so which in the long run that should lead to better carrier pricing. So great question. I love the deep dive questions.
All right, thanks Steve for that question. Next up on the board, Dolph in Florida has a question. Scott, how long does it take for the Helix to switch over from broadband to wireless?
Really good question. So, and I'm glad that he asked the question this way and talking about wireless, because we do have a CDMA card, obviously, for the Helix, but we're pushing everybody to the LTE.
Yes.
Those two modules are the exact same price, so you might as well get the LTE and get the more current. But the real answer is it's 15 seconds, right? So, there's a lot going on under the covers. We're monitoring those connections and how we monitor them and all of that, and how we manage them. But effectively, it's 15 seconds.
Okay, 15 seconds. Dolph, hope that helps you out. Next up, we have Stacy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. She asks, Scott, you mentioned the fact that antennas matter. In that description, you mentioned that your ultra-wideband antenna received a 3 dBi gain. Can you discuss?
So again, great question, Stacy. So when we talk about gain, there's some common reference points that you can use, and it can get complicated because sometimes you're talking about different impedances and how much power you're putting in, and are you starting with the same base voltage and all that kind of stuff. So it can get really complicated really fast. So the easy way to think of this is that for that 3 dBi gain, you can expect roughly twice the power.
Okay.
It's a weird curve, right? So it's not like a straight line. It's not kind of a one-for-one thing. So 3 dBi gets you roughly twice the power.
Okay. Hope that helps you, Stacy in Dallas. Next up, I have Barry from Indiana with a question. Scott, you showed all of the bands and the channels from all the different carriers. Which one is better?
Good question again. Without sounding like a Verizon ad, it is important to note that just like sensors, when we put sensors, wireless sensors in people's houses, the frequency matters, right? And it matters because the higher the frequency, the less penetration you get through walls and doors and that kind of stuff. So the same thing applies here. I pointed out, I think when we had that slide up, I pointed out that T-Mobile had some new 600 megahertz spectrum. That's going to be great at penetrating through buildings, and you can bet you can absolutely bet that they're going to hang their hat on really good building penetration once they get that up and running, right?
Okay.
So you can see, though, if you look at that slide, that all the carriers had bandwidth between 600 and 850 megahertz, and so that means that all of them have recognized that and are utilizing that to bolster their network. So roughly the same.
Okay, Barry in Indiana. Hope that helps you out. Scott, I'm looking up and down the board, and we are getting more and more questions coming in. Let's tackle those right now. All right, Scott, let's start with Greg. Greg asks, so a GSM card is available through Resolution. Any plans to make it available through ipDatatel? You have to set up as a dealer, I believe, with Resolution to use the GSM card.
Yeah, so let's this is a great time to use some of the stuff that we just talked about, right? So remember GSM is a different kind of technology than LTE. It's different technologies than CDMA, which means a different carrier, a different network. So absolutely, we are working on that. You should expect to see news from us pretty quickly on that plan. So yes, expect to see a GSM card on another carrier. I won't say which one yet. Pretty soon. So the answer is not today, but very soon. It's coming down the road, Greg. Thank you for your question. Next, Scott, we have Ian. Ian asks, was I reading correctly that the BAT LTE with the high gain antenna works with CDMA? The answer is no. So the BAT LTE does not have CDMA fallback, so that's a different thing. But that high gain antenna that we have does work with CDMA. So if I took that high gain antenna, that ultra wideband high gain antenna, unfortunately we only sell that in doubles, so we sell it in packs of 2. Right. But if I take one of those and I screw it onto our current CDMA device, it works great. In fact, you get about 1.5 dBi, which is roughly an additional 30% in terms of gain on for the CDMA device. So yes, you can use that antenna with that device if that's what you were asking. I hope that answered your question, Ian. Okay, Ian, hope that helps you out. Coming up next, Jason asks, do your smart devices now only work with the Helix platform? So I think the question there is really about Z-Wave, right? Okay. So I think some of the folks on the line may or may not know, we used to have a device that we call the Gateway. We no longer sell the Gateway. So going forward, we're putting all of our eggs in the Helix basket where home automation is concerned, right? So our plan is going forward to put all of our development effort towards the Helix for home automation, not looking backward on those previous devices. Okay, Jason, hope that helps you out. I've got another question from Greg. Greg asks, are there any brand specifics or compatibility rules for using Helix
or the Secure Smart app with any or all available Z-Wave devices?
Sure. So obviously there are going to be devices that work better than others. Some of the thermostats have some odd functionality. Some of the door locks only support certain numbers of users, things along those lines. For the most part, we're compatible with most Z-Wave devices. We have done the best job we could possibly do of deploying the entire protocol. There are some exceptions to that. I want to talk about what those are. So today, multi-channel devices. You know how you have the power strips where you can turn each of the different sockets in the power strip on and off?
Yes.
Those are what we call multi-channel. We don't support those yet. But the nice thing is we've built out the API stack so that as soon as we get the new interface done, we can support those. So I guess the easy way to say this is the vast majority of Z-Wave devices will work. There are some funky kind of edge ones that we don't have support for yet. And just suffice it to say that we are working hard to continue to add to that. So right now it's lights, locks, thermostats, and obviously outlets that work well. And we've tested quite a few. We do have a list that we plan to publish, and that's all going through testing now. So expect to see that list pretty quickly, and it'll be posted on the website.
Greg, great question. Next up on the board, Sanjeev asks, has the FCC authorized the decommissioning of the 3G network in order to expand the LTE network?
So this would be an awesome question for the carriers. So the relationship the carriers have with the FCC means that the FCC licenses them a section of spectrum. They don't necessarily say how they need to deploy that spectrum, right? So they get to pick. They could use that spectrum for 2G technology if they wanted to. So in this case, what you're seeing is the carriers one by one as they begin to turn down parts of their network. They're leaving some 3G in place because they know there's lots of that technology out there, but they're picking off different parts of their bandwidth to use for LTE. In the big cases, you'll see that like Sprint, T-Mobile, that 600 megahertz, they're going to go all LTE. There won't be any of the older technologies there. What's interesting is the different flavors of LTE that we see coming online. Verizon a few months ago turned on their M1, their M-series network. So it went live across the entire country all at the same time. So I got excited about that because now I have an option to use a lower cost module and develop a different product, right? That hopefully will give us lower cost on both the service and on the hardware itself. That's something we can pass through. That's great value to me. So I hope that answers your question. The reality is those are handled on a carrier-by-carrier basis with the FCC directly, and really they license the bandwidth, not necessarily the technology that's used on it.
Okay. Sanjeev, thank you for asking that question. Looks like I have 5 more questions. We still have time. If you have questions, please keep those coming in. Also want to remind everybody that this presentation will be made available to you by your account executive later today. Again, thank you for sending those questions in. Next up on the board, John asks, this sounds great. Are you also working on 5G coming in the year 2019?
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So 5G is an augmented implementation of a lot of the LTE technologies that we've been talking about. And the answer is today, no, we're not. We're actually focused on additional versions of the LTE, right? We're focused on M1 and some of those things. And 5G is really about speed. It's about big bandwidth. And for our devices, we don't have that need. I will say this, though. We do have some interesting research going on with using 5G with our video product. That's in its absolute infancy. It's just research at this point. So no actual work on 5G devices at this point.
Okay, John, thank you for your question. Hope that helps. Next up on the board, Rob asks, does this work in Canada? Does LTE work in Canada? If so, which cellular networks?
So the answer is obviously there's lots of LTE all over Canada. We don't have a vendor in Canada for in terms of a network. But just like the GSM question that I answered earlier, you could expect to see that very, very soon. We have a couple of contracts in place, and we expect to announce pretty quickly. We want to make sure we've got all the dot the I's, cross the T's, everything's ready to go.
The ducks in a row.
The ducks in a row, but you should expect to see that pretty quick.
Okay, Rob, thank you for your question. Hope that helps. This isn't really a question, but just a nice comment. Mark comments, you have a great product that works excellent remotely for programming as well as on the Verizon network. Mark, thank you for your comment.
That's always nice.
Next up on the board, Carrie asks, what is the expected remaining life of current CDMA radios? Great question.
That's a great question. So in terms of the technology, they should work until there's no network for them to talk to physically, right? The radios themselves. So let's talk about the network. Verizon has already told us that we should expect to see next summer in 2018, we should expect to stop deploying new CDMA devices, right? That doesn't mean they're turning the network off. It's still going to be around for a few more years.
Sure.
But we should plan on stop deploying new CDMA devices next summer. So that kind of gives you an idea. That's just Verizon. Obviously, each of the carriers will handle this differently, and all on their own timelines. But that gives you an idea.
So the answer is we don't know, but it's
sure.
Years down the road.
We get notification from the carriers, kind of what their timelines are. They're all different. It's an easy thing to Google, so I won't go into each of the different carriers.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Verizon won't be allowing new CDMA devices on the network past next summer.
Got it. Okay, Carrie, thank you for your question. Next on the board, Rob asks, does this work with any panel? If so, how does it communicate with the panel?
So I'm not sure if he's talking about, I'll talk about both. So I'm not sure he's talking about the BAT or the Helix. So let's talk about the Helix first.
Okay.
So remember that the Helix has the capability to have a translator module installed in it, so it can take over a whole range of wireless sensors, the GE, NAPCO, 2 gig, all those wireless sensors, it can take those over. So that works with any sensor, right? It also we have a translator that's a wired to wireless, so you could wire that in, take over wired sensors and pass those to the Helix. So that's if you were replacing that panel. If he's asking in the context of the BAT, my suggestion would be go to the website. We have an actual page there that shows you exactly what you can and can't do, and how it communicates with each panel. Some panel we connect to key bus. Other panels were key switch, which means we're talking on the tip and ring, right? So the answer is it depends. It depends on the panel and the technologies that company has deployed.
Okay, Rob, hope that helps you out. Question coming in from Robert. Robert asks, being just an audio dealer for years and having an interest in getting into the business, and this question may be for another time, but how difficult is it to begin using the ipDatatel Secure Smart Helix on the security side? We have lots of clients asking if we do security. Robert, that's a great question for us to take right now.
So it's one of those, we make it as easy as we possibly can is the best answer I can give you. So if you give us a call, we can get you with one of our inside sales reps. They can get you set up with an account within just a few minutes. Right?
Absolutely.
For that matter, they can get a Helix set up for you. We can get you a demo kit out, right? So that you've got some hardware and you can start playing with it. I will say this: deploying the Helix is super, super easy. So learning how to do it is incredibly simple as well. We have the configuration pages online that you can use to do a lot of the configuration right from your office before you ever send the device out. Wireless sensors, super fast to get set up and going. We make it about as easy as we possibly can, and we try to deliver that value right up front. I would say this: we should use you as a test case, right? Feel free to call in. Let's get you set up with an account. We'll get you a test device, and let's get you going.
Absolutely, Robert. That's a great question, and it's just easy to get started with ipDatatel, and it's also easy to install the Helix panel. Yeah. Okay, I am going to read contact information. If you folks would like to ask any more questions, we've got a few more minutes. To learn more, you can visit us at ipDatatel.com/Helix. You're going to find plenty of product information there, like our product sheet, catalogs, technical documents like the manuals, quick start guides, also guides to the alarmdealer.com portal, as well as links to our YouTube channel with helpful videos. Please reach out to sales directly at sales@ipDatatel.com. The number here in Houston Metro, 713-452-2700. Type in extension 1 for sales. Outside of Houston Metro, please use this number, 866-896-2944, extension 1. We've got another one coming in from Mark. Mark asks, when do you think Helix Z-Wave will support scenes, and will it allow you to use existing Honeywell sensors as the trigger for Z-Wave scenes with the combo translator? What do you say, Scott?
Awesome questions. I'm steeped in the Z-Wave world every day, so I'm in the middle of this. Scenes and triggers is something that we're working on right now.
Okay.
We expect to have it out in Q1, and two things. One, this is something that there's two ways to do it, right? We could have thrown something together and had scenes and triggers, all the backend support, all the API support. That work's done and been done. So we could have thrown this out a couple months ago. What we decided to do was work really hard to create really elegant interfaces so that when you go to set one of these up, you're going to understand how it's going to work. When you set up scenes and triggers, those things begin to interact with each other, right?
Okay.
So having one scene that turns on a light and another one that turns off a light and having them activate 5 minutes apart, probably not with really the intended effect. And we should give you a user interface that allows you to see that's coming, right?
Right.
So we're working really hard on elegant interfaces for getting this done. At the same time, we're doing a lot of work on the apps. So expect to see this early in Q1, and expect to see kind of full app revamp late in Q1 going into IC West. But so the other question that was asked was about using existing Honeywell sensors as a trigger for Z-Wave devices. So that's an important question. So once you have a sensor, it doesn't matter who manufactured it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have a sensor enrolled to the device, the logic behind that sensor triggering something is the panel doesn't care. Once it's enrolled as a sensor, it's a sensor. It doesn't matter to the panel that was a Honeywell or that it came through the translator.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, great question. I've got a few more minutes. I'm going to read out some contact information. If anyone has any additional questions, please send those in right now. ipDatatel.com. You can go there to find product information, technical documents, links to our videos, links to our alarmdealer.com portal guide. Contact sales directly at sales@ipDatatel.com. 713-452-2700, extension 1 is the contact number in Metro Houston. Outside of Houston Metro, use our toll-free line, 866-896-2944, again, extension 1. Scott, looks like that's just about going to wrap it up. Would you like to close out with anything regarding LTE, Helix, how easy it is to do business with ipDatatel?
I think everybody's aware that with ipDatatel, we treat all of our dealers kind of the same, right? We love the dealers. It is delivering value to them is what we're all about.
That's right.
So that's kind of key for us. The other thing I would say is, we're doing a deep dive on LTE this month. Last month we did a deep dive on the Helix, really got into the security and the nuts and bolts there.
Yep.
I like doing these because I'm a techie nerdy guy, but we want to do these on topics that you guys want. So give us your feedback. A lot of you guys have sales reps. A lot of you guys have interaction with us in other ways.
Yeah.
Let us know if there's a webinar that you guys would like to see us do. We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, talk to your sales rep. That's a great idea.
Yeah, we love that feedback. So that would be the other thing that I would say. That's about it. Great participation. Love answering the questions. I think we got 20 questions in this time. So
just about. All right, folks. Again, if you'd like to learn more, www.ipDatatel.com. You can reach sales at ipDatatel.com. 713-452-2700, extension 1, 866-896-2944. Thank you to everybody that took the time to participate with us today, and we look forward to talking with you in the near future. We've got a lot of exciting things on the way. Thank you. Bye-bye.